Yan, kamusta kayo dyan mga kumeta? I hope nakakonect tayo. Ayan, medyo helpless case talaga mga internet natin dito. I don't know what's going on. But let's get back to the discussions na we were hoping to have actually earlier. Ito. Obviously, as some of you were able to eavesdrop dun sa interview natin, or some of you were actually were able to watch it kahapon with our good friends, sila Dindo at saka Edwin Lasherda dun sa CNN Philippines. We talked about how the situation is looking very tough, no? For the opposition pagdating sa 2025. Kung tinignan mo lahat ng surveys na lumabas, at least yung mga public ones, whether ito yung mga Publicus Asia types, whether ito yung mga Octa types na medyo recent lang lumabas, or yung mga established survey agencies like Pulse Asia, for instance, or SWS. Some of them are published, some of them are not. If you look at all of them, if there's one thing consistent, that dyan is someone named Tulfo is still in the run to top the Senate race. No, so in this case, it's Erwin Tulfo. So that tells you something. When all the surveys suggest that another Tulfo could be in a position to dominate the Senate race, it just tells you na benta pa rin sa ating mga kababayan itong ganitong klase ng mga pamumuno, no? Yung medyo mala-action, di ba? Yung medyo tough man, strong man, macho kind of politics. Now, obviously, each of the brothers have their own kind of sui generis kind of approach to politics. But the Tulfo brand is very powerful nowadays. So imagine if another Tulfo is in the top three of the Senate, then that tells you something about the direction of disinformation lang yan, ganyan. No, I mean, there's also definitely genuine yearning for kind of a strong man leader to provide some sort of shortcut solution to people, or at least there is this impression na kung may mga tao na katulad din ng mga Tulfo nandyan sa power, they will be very rapidly responsive, no? Dun sa mga gusto ng tao. Now, we saw also that kind of political desire also helping the rise of people like Isko Moreno, who by the way is also in a very good position. Basta sa lahat ng mga major service na nakita natin, mukhang Isko Moreno is also kind of almost shoe-in, no? For the Senate should he decide to run next year. So it's just a question of whether he'll be in the top six or not, no, as things stand. Now, having said all of those things, pag tinignan mo yung race mismo, napaka I mean, the top five more or less, mukhang isa, dalawa dyan are gonna be people close to Duterte. So Bongo and Bato de la Rosa seem to be doing pretty decently sa mga surveys. So that means that the Duterte camp will have at least two individuals that they can field as, parang kumbaga representative ng kanilang kampo, 'di ba? Tulfos of course are building their own profile. Amy Marcos is also going to be in strong position if she runs for it. So you can think about at least three, if not four, strong pro Duterte people doing quite decent, if not very well, dito sa upcoming elections na yan. And then the rest are either, mga re-electionists or ito yung mga tao na malapit naman sa Marcos Jr. camp, no? Interestingly, mga tao na hindi ganun ka-competitive before, katulad ni, for instance, Gibo Chodoro, now they're kind of within the striking distance of Magic 12, no? They're knocking at the door, no? So I think if you're Gibo Chodoro, I won't be surprised if he's also considering his prospects in 2025 while he's undertaking itong trabaho niya na napakahalaga, of course, National Defense Secretary. But having said all of that, to be honest, if you look at all of these surveys, medyo underperforming pa rin yung mga tao na affiliated sa opposition. No, I don't know if President Duterte himself will run, but should President Duterte run, I won't be surprised he'll easily be top five. Because if Bongo and Bato are top five, since they're more or less just derivatives of Duterte, you can imagine Duterte himself would be in top two, top three. Now, that would have made you assume na kung yung pinakamalakas galing sa opposition ng tumakbo, they would be also shooing for the top 5 position. But kung tinignan mo yung survey, actually si Lenny Robredo, hindi siya even sure for top 12. No? Now, my sense is if Lenny were to try to really mobilize and try to really run for office at the Senate level, I won't be surprised she'll be top 10 at least, no? If not a bit higher. But the reality is that we don't know what's her plans, and I won't be surprised if her plans are actually to stay there in Bicol region and serve at that LGU level position, right? And I think it actually makes sense in many ways. Perhaps going back to an executive position at the LGU level. That's really the way forward for the opposition and all. So let's just put aside Lenny, who in theory is the strongest candidate that the opposition could have for the Senate race, considering that she got more than 15 million votes, at least officially speaking, sa last year's elections. And this 15 million is for for the presidency, right? Isa lang pwede mo botohin sa presidency. So hindi parehas yung 15 million for a senator kumpara sa 15 million for a president. Because I mean, 15 million sa isang senator, you're just one of many people na binoboto ng tao. So a 15 million for a presidential candidate is quite a high number. So you would have expected na medyo shoe-in lang, top 3 even, or if not top 5, if running for. Because yung 15 million plus ni Lenny, hindi gano'n kalaki sa 16 million na panalo ni Digong. So kung si Digong is top 3 or number 1 base sa surveys, you would imagine Lenny should be there. Now, ibang usapan na if you guys want to think na lahat ng surveys ay fake. Well, ibang usapan na yan. You can go to other vloggers. Mag-ibang usapan na kayo dyan. But for me, because I don't rely on one survey, I look at all different 4 or 5 different surveys, you triangulate it, and then you look at trend lines. So one trend line is very clear. Another Tulfo could be in a position to top the race. Second trend line that I'm seeing here is that yung mga senators na affiliated kay Digong, mukhang malaking chance na makapasok. At least Bato, Bongo, and Amy Marcos. And at least dito sa sa Okta naman, even Francis Tolentino medyo may pag-asa. I don't know doon sa ibang service, medyo alanganin si Francis Tolentino doon. Nakikita din natin yung mga ibang figures na mala-action din, yung mga rapid response type of people like Isko Moreno, also consistently in the top 6, top 7 dun sa mga iba't ibang surveys. So that tells you something about the bigger picture in the Philippines. So bago tayo pag-usapan mga SD cards and disinformation and all of that, you have to understand the political landscape, no? At anong mga hinihingi ng mga voters. Kasi ang problema sa mga ibang analysis na nakita ko is very supply side, meaning eto, may disinformation, nauto daw yung tao, tapos ganitong bumoto. Yung ganyan na analysis, not only is it factually problematic, but it's actually very limiting also. You also have to understand anong hinahanap ng voters at bakit yan ang hinahanap nila. So you have to have a demand side understanding of elections, no, and political preferences. At yun ang medyo kulang talaga doon sa nakikita kong analysis galing sa mga ibang tao, especially yung mga galing sa opposition na supposedly more reasonable, more educated, more evidence-based. But I see more prejudice and bitterness rather than proper political analysis. I don't know where this is coming from. Is it lack of political analytic skills or is it because of arrogance, hubris, or both? I don't know. But anyway, yung third pattern na nakita ko halos lahat ng surveys ay mahirapan talaga ng opposition. And most likely, you will not run for the Senate. So that means you're really looking at people like Kiko, people like Bam, right? Siguro medyo Franklin Dillon and mga others, not to mention Chel Jokno. Siguro mga 4 or 5 naisip ko na who may be within the striking distance of top 12, especially once they declare yung kanilang plano to run for the Senate. Now, obviously it's not gonna be easy. And I remember some of discussions na meron tayo with Ronald Llamas, diba? Na parang, I think his understanding is, dapat hintayin natin, parang tanggapin mo na lang sa 2025, medyo malabo, medyo mahirap. 2028 na lang planuhin mo. Well, when you think about it, actually, I have a big issue with that kind of analysis in a sense that there may not be a 2028 elections in the way we anticipate it, no? Kasi sobrang taas yung posibilidad, no? Na if mga pro-Marcos camp ay sobrang ganda ng kanilang performance sa 2025 election, let's say, sige, fine, 2, 3, 4 senators affiliated with the Duterte camp will make it in. More or less, ito yung mga malakas din sa mga dating elections. But the pro-Marcos camp or independents na may leaning kay Marcos or independents na hindi naman talaga opposition, they will dominate not only the Senate, but especially dun sa lower house of Congress. In that situation, kasi, if you were to bet right now, etong sasabihin mo, 3 or 4 ang pro-Digong side ang manalo sa Senate. Pero sa Kongreso, it's gonna be totally a lopsided race. At doon sa ibang LGU races, you can imagine na sobrang lakas ang maging performance ng administration people. At least, based on historical trend lines. No? At I think that explains why yung mga pro-Duterte camp ay medyo nagpa-panic mode na. Now, isang dahilan na nanonood po tayo ng mga videos nila, Buljakan, yung mga, ewan ko, alam mo yung mga, the usual suspects, no? It's because I'm trying to assess also what is their level of desperation and panic, no? At nakikita ko, I mean, some of them, dun sa mga kanilang mga sa mga kanilang vlogs, they're essentially inciting, rebellion. Medyo delikado yung mga sinasabi nila. Yung isa naman, yung ex-human rights lawyer na isa, sabi naman niya, hindi naman siya nagpo-push for gulo, pero pwede magkaroon ng gulo if there'll be moves against Duterte at the highest levels, especially at the ICC level. But, I mean, the thing is, still, may tatlo or apat sa kampo nila na mukhang malaking chance na maging senador ulit. And I think yung strategy din ng Duterte camp right now is to mobilize the base by creating a sense of emergency, which is not totally unfounded. So basically, ang idea dito is kailangan natin lumaban, kailangan na mag-mobilize tayo, kailangan natin gamitin lahat ng mga kailangan natin gamitin para maging competitive tayo sa 2025 at saka magkaroon tayo ng isang political shield, no? Uh, kung saan magdadalawang isip yung kabilang kampo na to go after yung mga iniidola natin yan. So I think there's that kind of mobilization, desperation, scrambling na nangyari. And at the very least, they have 3 or 4 people from their camp who can make it to the Senate in next year's election. So they're not totally irrelevant forces. No, the Marcos camp naman, it's just a matter of how dominant they're going to be in next year's elections and how much they can essentially checkmate the other side. Which leaves you with this very difficult question. Ano naman mangyari dun sa totoong opposition in the meantime? Right? Kung Lenny's not gonna run, and then sila Bam and Kiko and all, just outside knocking at the door dun sa Magic 12. And going back to what I'm saying, yes, in theory, it makes sense for them to build yung foundations for 2028 as early as now. But it's very possible na after 2025, babaguhin na yung buong saligang batas ng Pilipinas. It is very possible na after 2025, magkakaroon ng isang kompromiso kung saan yung mga supporters ni Marcos sa Senado, supporters ni Marcos sa Kongreso, most likely still under someone named Martin Romualdez, di ba? Ito yung mag-uusap-usap sila. They'll come up with a compromise whereby they'll change the constitution. Siguro until 2028 pa rin magsaserve yung mga ibang senadors, yung presidente mo. And after 2028, maybe BBM will be some sort of a symbolic president, kind of a chancellor type, ala Alemania. And then those in the Senate, maybe they'll be part of a, I don't know, House of Lords or something like that. But there will be a parliamentary system essentially established. And we know, the thing with the parliamentary system is, hindi necessarily nanalo yung pinaka-charismatic ng tao bilang prime minister. Sa isang parliamentary system, ang pinaka malakas ay yung kampo or yung isang leader na kaya niya mag-mobilize ng ibang mga politiko to support him or support her. Di ba? So it could be a very problematic, very controversial figure. But in the parliamentary system, if marami kang mga aliado ng parliamentarians, mga ibang essentially trapos or ibang politikos, if you get enough numbers, then you can form the next government. As simple as that. And to become a prime minister, all you have to do is just to win a seat in the parliament and then be part of the biggest coalition. And then doon magkakaroon ng horse trading, negotiations, so on and so forth. And the next thing you know, you have the biggest numbers and you can become the prime minister. Right? Just look at the countries like Japan or Malaysia as examples. No, marami silang naging prime ministers na hindi necessarily popular na tao. I mean, look at Fumio Kishida, for instance, yung prime minister in Japan. I think his approval ratings are like 26%, 21% even. But he can still become the prime minister because he belongs to the biggest party, and that party has been able to build the biggest coalition dun sa Japanese diet. Also in Malaysia, we have had many prime ministers, including the current prime minister, si Anwar Ibrahim, who's not behind him, but he still can become the prime minister because he was able to build the biggest coalition, right? So, in a parliamentary system, ang laki ng chance na totally ma-box out ng mga Dutertes, na hindi magkakaroon ng chance si Sara Duterte or yung mga Duterte people to essentially plot their way back to power. Kasi parati ko nakikita sa mga comment section, uy, humanda kayo 2028, iyakan na naman kayo dyan, yung mga ganyan-ganyan. But my point is, wait lang, you are assuming na yung isang kampo dyan ay hintay lang nila na bumalik yung kabila. Hindi mangyayari yan. It's very possible that they'll push for total constitutional change. Now, that is why mahalaga na yung totoong opposition, kaya ako parating sinasabi ko, there should be a distinction between functional opposition and ideological opposition. Functional opposition is yung kumokontra lang sa gobyerno na malakas, or at least relatively mas malakas dun sa ibang kumokontra. So that makes it the Duterte camp essentially, right? Ideological opposition are people who actually really want transformative progressive change sa isang political system. Now, the functional opposition, which is the Duterte camp, they have some chance. Meron pa rin silang may asim pa yung kanilang kampo. But yung real opposition, yun yung challenge sa kanila ngayon. Because if they do not win any position at the national level. And then sa LGU level, okay, let's say Lenny maybe wins here and there, and then some good guys like Vico Soto are also there. I don't know that that will be enough for them to have enough say doon sa potential constitutional change situation na mangyayari after 2025 elections. So yes, agree ako na dapat realistic yung opposition na yung prospects nila ay napakahirap. Ang daming mga obstacles for them to win top positions, especially in Senate in 2025. But they have to try. Because if they don't try at all, baka totally box out sila. Hindi lang sa 2025, but for good. Di ba? And this is gonna be a very tricky situation because you want the good guys to be there when there will be serious discussions about constitutional change. Para siguraduhin na yung constitutional change discussions after 2025 hindi mapunta kung saan-saan. At hindi magkakaroon ng mga mumbo-jumbo engineering, legal constitutional engineering, which will undermine essentially foundations of any aspiration to having a real democracy in the Philippines. Kaya ang argument ko dito is, two or three strongest people from the opposition have to really get every support that they can para lang at least isa or dalawa sa kanila may chance na makapasok sa Senate. And then, combined with Rizal Ontiveros, combined with, will Coco Pimentel still be there? And then combined with some more independent-minded folks na not necessarily with the Marcos camp who may have their own logic and own strategy, they may have just enough in the Senate, diba? Yun po yung tinitignan natin situation right now. So that's why ang contention ngayon is there has to be an effort to at least win one or two seats in the Senate, or at least they have to try, or at least there should be some show of force para hindi siya completely marginalized at ma-box out dun sa ating political landscape in the coming year or so. Because in the next 2 years or 3 years, you may have transformative changes in the country. Alright, mukhang na-disconnect na naman yung isang internet natin. Ito talaga nakakainis, kaya ang hirap bumubuelo. Gusto mong paganda yung analysis mo, tapos malabo yung internet mo and all. Anyway guys, thank you so much dun sa mga nakikinig sa atin. I hope we can have better conditions for internet discussion soon. And please continue to support us and listen to us. And don't worry, we'll update you as more information comes in. And don't worry, magkakaroon din tayo ng more reactions doon sa mga analysis ng yung mga minamahal yung mga vloggers doon sa kabilang kampo. On that note, thank you very much. God bless and